So the NFL draft kicks off. You've been longing for this day and you can't wait till your team is on the clock. But the very first team uses the entire clock before they make their pick. And you like, bro, you had all season. And then every single team behind them proceeds to do the exact same thing, making a draft last forever. Now emotionally this pisses you off, but logically you know every single team has to consider all of their options. They got to field last second trade rumors. They got to make sure they get this right. But what if I told you there was one team in history who followed this exact formula but still didn't get the pick right? And I don't mean they didn't get the pick right like they drafted a bust. That happens all the time. I mean they actually had a guy go up and hand in the wrong name. As far as I know, they're the only team in history to draft the wrong player. And in today's video, I'm gonna tell you how it happened. Let go. Alright man, real quick before we jump into the video, gotta give a shout out to today's video sponsor, SeatGeek. SeatGeek is an app whose sole purpose is to make purchasing tickets to live events easier for you. They aggregate tickets and put them all in one place, making the selection process simple. They also grade each ticket on a scale from 1 to 100 and allow you to preview the view of each seat. All of these functions help to simplify the process and ensure that you get the best deal. Now, if you want to download the SeatGeek app, click the link in the description and make sure you use my code FlemLo for $20 off your first purchase. So in 1982, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had only been in existence for a few years, but had already made the playoffs multiple times, including the 1981 season, the one right before this story takes place. So the franchise was in a good place. Well, during the 1982 draft, they would see that change completely. The director of personnel for the Bucs, Ken Herrock, had narrowed the Bucs choices down to two players, Sean Farrell, an offensive guard from Penn State, or Booker Reese, a DN out of Bethune-Cookman College. Now, imagine this. The representative for the Bucs was an equipment manager named Pat Marcasillo. Possibly butchered his last name, but I'll be calling him Pat for the duration of this video. Now, old Pat had just been given this honor due to his amazing work and commitment as an equipment manager. I'm sure after the fact, he wished he'd missed a day of work or put the wrong pads in somebody's locker or anything just so that he'd never gotten this honor in the first place. But hindsight's 2020. Now, at the time, all the communication at the draft was done via speakerphone. So pretty much like a walkie-talkie, like you could only talk one way at a time. And if you think of how shaky speakerphone can sometimes be today, just imagine how horrible it was in 1982. The device did not do a good job of distinguishing well between background noise and the person who was actually speaking. Not to mention in general, they just sound like crap. So Ken says to Pat, write down two names, Farrell and Reese. I'm gonna hit you back and let you know which one we gonna be rolling with, because at this time the Bucs were still trying to decide. Now the Bucs were the 17th pick and they also had a full 15-minute window to make this pick, but of course they waited until there was only 1 minute left, and then Ken hits up Pat and they have a brief conversation. We were on the phone, but it was hard to hear. I'm hearing Pat say, quiet. Quiet, quiet. I can't hear what he's saying. And I can hear a lot of noise on the other end in the background in New York. We were getting close to our time, but we always let it ride until maybe the last 30 seconds or so, and then we'd turn our pick in. Now, we as an organization felt that we needed both of those players, but after we mulled it over and discussed it, the selection was gonna be Booker Reese. So I told Pat, I said, listen, Pat, you got two names there. We're not going with Sean Farrell. We're going with Booker Reese. Now just pause the story right here. It's already hard to hear. It's really loud. Why? Like, who chooses to communicate this information in this way, this long, convoluted way for no reason? Now, Pat, you got two names there. I know how many names I got. Just tell me which one. The fact that he says both names here, and we know that the form of communication they're using is shoddy and is super loud and the thing's probably cutting in and out, it just makes no sense. Pat, two names. One with Sean Farrell, one with Reese. It was like if I was riding somewhere and I ain't know which way to turn, but you was on the phone trying to give me direction. And you was like, "Now, Flem, you got 2 turns coming up. You're not gonna take the left turn, you're gonna take the right turn. Just tell me to turn right. Like, yo, Flem, turn right." Simple. Anyway, back to the story. So apparently Pat did not hear the Booker Reese part of it because of the noise. The only name he could make out was Sean Farrell and assumed that Ken was telling him to choose Sean Farrell, so he turned it in. After we turned in the pick, we're watching a minute later on television and find out we had selected Sean Farrell. There was a lot of cussing like, "What the hell's going on here? What the hell's he doing?" But there was nothing we can do at that point. That's the name that was turned in, and they went with the name that was turned in. That's the way the selection process went. Now afterwards, the Bucks tried to rescind the pick, but the NFL wouldn't allow it. Poor Pat, bro. Dude was basically in tears after being given this job and having it go so horribly wrong. I mean, horribly wrong, right? So the Bucks draft room went silent for a while. Then the team owner just blurts out, "If this ever leaves this room, you're all fired." What he failed to realize was that they had already tried to rescind the pick and sent Pat up there to talk to the commissioner. So yeah, it had already left the room anyway. Now Sean Farrell was shocked that he had been taken at 17. He'd literally just gotten a call before saying that the Bucks would not be picking him. But even though it was by accident, he ended up getting drafted by the Bucks. So yo, he went to the team and he did his thing. He started for the Bucks for 5 years and was a good player. Now he played in the NFL for 10 years, and he later said after playing on some other teams that he wasn't super surprised by the debacle. He said that things were always upside down in the organization and he wasn't surprised one bit. He also said that the facilities were like high school facilities and that the team would even bill players $50 if they won a game ball. They didn't provide team meals and the guys had to eat at Wendy's, and he went on and on. He spoke highly of his teammates, highly of his coaches, but really lowly of the organization. So what about the cat that they meant to draft, Booker Reese? Well, the Bucks didn't give up on Reese. He actually ended up sliding into the second round. The Bucks had already traded their second round pick the year prior for a cornerback, but the hell with that, the Bucks were determined to get their guy. So they hopped on the phone and they made one of the worst draft situations in history even worse. So they traded to get Chicago's second round pick. What did they trade, you ask? Well, they traded their first round pick for the next year. But hey, they got their guy. They drafted Reese. Now here's the thing. The following year, everybody knew, except the Bucks apparently, that this was gonna be a draft to remember. You had John Elway, Jim Kelly, Dan Marino, Eric Dickerson, Darryl Green. I mean, it was stacked. But the Bucks traded away their chance to draft one of those guys. And they traded it away for a second round pick that was only meant to correct the mistake that they had no business making in the first place. Check it out, bro. That following year in '83, the Bucks picked at number 18. Dan Marino was picked at number 27, bro. So this whole debacle cost them a chance to draft one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the game. And I know some of y'all are thinking, well, Flem, they had Doug Williams, and they did. But if you recall, Doug Williams fell out with the team at that exact same time. So they needed a quarterback. And there's a good chance they would have addressed quarterback in that draft. And Dan Marino was sitting right there sliding down the board. Good chance they would have took him. On top of all that, my boy Booker Reese didn't play well and was traded after 3 seasons. Shortly after that, he was completely out of the league after picking up a cocaine habit. After this series of unfortunate events, the Bucks fell on hard times. They actually had double-digit losses every year from 1983 all the way through 1994. And of course, this slump didn't last forever, as the Bucks did win a Super Bowl in 2002. But the team's fortunes could have obviously been very different. Moral of the story, communication is key.